right, thank you, Kenzie. Before we get started, uh, how many have been to one of these Did you? How many went to last month's webinar? I forgot the name of it, but um, just put a yes or no in the chat. Okay. Yeah, I kind of thought you guys were here before. So there is some new content in this, but it's at the end of the program. I've got a couple of slides that talk about. Thank you, Bobby. We're going to cover all the stuff in the beginning as well, but there's a couple of slides at the end that have, I think, about 10 more suggestions, recommendations that we have. So just bear with us until we get there. And today we're going to ask you guys some questions. We're doing some polling to kind of understand our clients and our prospects and everything a lot better and understand their concerns, their needs. And so I will have a slide and you'll see. It works just like it always does, but you'll have a little pop-up to answer a question as we go through. All right. And here's the first one. Have you or someone you know been a victim of a ransomware attack? And we're not tracking who answers this or anything. I don't even think we can see. I think it's all anonymous. So be honest.
Give everybody just a second to answer. Got just a few more.
All of the above's 20% right now. Someone I know is 60%. Wow. What we're finding is about 20% of the people that attend our webinars has been a victim of a ransomware attack, and this is not going to change anytime soon. And in fact, I just read 2 or 3 articles about the dramatic increase of ransomware attacks right now, and looks like 2020 is going to set a new record. And it's a serious problem that I'm glad you're here to learn how you can protect yourself. Got some business survival stats. These cyber attacks are costing an average of $200,000 to pay the ransom, mitigate it, remediate, clean the network up, make sure there's nothing else there. It's a very, very expensive process. Downtime, all of that is very, very expensive, especially if you're an accountant or an attorney, things like that. This one's from 2018. 20% of small businesses will be hacked within 1 year. 45% of all backup failures are due to hardware failure. Backups are so important. Only 6% of companies survive longer than 2 years after losing data or having a security breach. A lot of that has to do with the loss of reputation, loss of trust. Failure rate of backups is 75%. 60% of small companies close within 6 months of being hacked due to various reasons. Reputational damage, fines, the hit to the financials, the $200,000 average cost. All right, another poll. Who's responsible for your IT in your organization? Okay, 43% of you have an IT person on staff. Another 43 is you, but it's not really your official job. 14% outsources their IT to an MSP. That's a very good way to do it. And apparently no one does break fix on our call today. It's interesting. So, who is responsible for your organization's information security? It's only two answers on this one. It's either the same as the first or the slide before or the question before, or is anyone using a managed security service provider? Okay. Looks like no one is using an MSSP, and we're going to talk about why using an MSSP is a very smart and good idea. But first, we're going to take a look at some myths and bust them. If I can get my poll thing out of my screen here, get the animation going there. We are too small. I continuously harp on this, and I'm still amazed that people will leave the webinar and go away with thinking that they're too small. They're in the middle of nowhere, like Lower Alabama, and it's simply not true. There's no such thing as being too small. The vast majority of these ransomware attacks are not the Colonial Pipelines or the JBS or that big, huge SolarWinds hack of government and other private organizations a few months back. The vast majority of them are automated attacks at volume, at scale. There's not someone there going after Bob's donut shop. It's their email, which is the primary way that it's propagated. Their email is amongst 100,000 others that the attacker is spraying to. And they're just hoping for conversion rates. They don't, when they attacked, now Colonial was a targeted attack, but they didn't know who it was. They just knew it was a big organization. So after they found out it was critical infrastructure and, you know, people couldn't get gasoline for their vehicles on the East Coast, they actually apologized. They said, well, we didn't know, but we still want our $4.5 million. So, but more importantly, there's so few of those that you see on CNN and read about in the Washington Post compared to those of you that know somebody. It happens to home users, very, very small businesses. If you have a computer, one computer in your business, you can be hit with ransomware. And it's not done to you. You're just caught up in a big web. It's kind of like me being on a kill list, an ISIS kill list. I got on it because of a hack. It was just random. Good cybersecurity is expensive. It's not. It's more than what you're going to pay for the latest Norton Internet Security Suite. But the good guys in the business, the white hat hackers, it's kind of like what IronTech does. We do things at scale with automation and bots. And because of that and the sheer number of people that need cybersecurity defensive tools, it's very inexpensive. And it's certainly inexpensive compared to going out of business or having to, you know, or having your company, you spend, say it's not $200,000, maybe it's $10,000 to recover. That would pay for enterprise grade security stuff. I'm talking the same exact stuff that Fortune 10 companies implement. That $10,000 cost to recover or pay the ransom or whatever type of attack it is, that can pay for years of good cybersecurity tools and services. I've heard IT pros say this: antivirus is good enough. That's all there is. And usually add on, and just don't click on file attachments or click on open file attachments from people you don't know. I've also heard them say, you're too small, you don't really have to worry about it. But the point is antivirus is not good enough. It's practically useless with modern ransomware attacks. And the reason is there's no virus in a modern ransomware attack for an antivirus to detect. And that is not all there is. There is a whole class of products that's much, much better that you need to put on your systems. And we're going to get to that, so I'm not leaving you hanging on that. Cybersecurity insurance is all well and good, and I think it's a good idea. We have a lot of it to protect us and protect our clients, but it's a last resort. If you have to cash in on an insurance policy because of a cyber attack, your reputation's damaged. Your client data or your financial data or other sensitive information is on the dark web probably, or it's being sold to the Chinese, or whatever that data set profile is worth is already gone. The attack has occurred. The reputation damage has occurred. It's just a way to help you get whole and maybe pay the ransom. But it's like all other insurance. It's the last resort. You think of all your insurance: homeowners, car insurance, life insurance. I don't want to use my life insurance, but I do have it. So, and besides that, and Kenzie, you might be interested to know this as well. I just found out, I was in a meeting yesterday, and I already knew that it was over 20% of the cybersecurity claims, insurance claims, are going unpaid. But the fellow that I was in a meeting with yesterday said it's hitting 49% now. And it's because the victim checked the wrong box on the insurance policy. And the insurance company just can't keep pace of the changes in technology, geopolitical dynamics, and everything else that goes around cybersecurity. So you really kind of need a security expert to make sure you check the right boxes on the application. But once again, if you only have a budget for either good defense or cybersecurity insurance, buy the good defense first, because there's a good chance that insurance claim won't be paid. And like I said, your reputation and all the other things have already happened, unless you just use it to pay the ransom, which that's up to you. It's not good that people have to pay the ransom, because it means they're going to continue to do it. And so that part of the solution is tricky. I'm not saying don't pay the ransom. That is a case-by-case basis. So if anyone on this call has had a ransomware attack, which I think the poll said none of you have had one, but if you know of someone that's had a ransomware attack, and you should find out if they had their network checked by an Infosec specialist, an MSSP or some other security specialist, and have it forensically examined. Because in modern day ransomware attack, and by modern day I mean just the last 3 or 4 years, there's always additional payloads like server backdoors, keyloggers, other things, boot sector loaders, and these are very, very sophisticated. In fact, a lot of them now are modified versions of the NSA's own offensive cyber weapons, like the Stuxnet virus that we and Israel used to damage the nuclear enrichment centrifuges in Iran, to set their nuclear program back years and years, and it was very successful. Unfortunately, that's one of them that's available for free to download on the dark web, and now it's being used against us. It's being modified to attack other industrial control systems, things like gates on dams and industrial control systems, fish tank thermometers in big casinos. There's millions of dollars was lost because a fish tank thermometer got hacked. So it's an industrial control system, or Internet of Things. And the United States is has more Internet of Things, or more devices connected to the Internet than any other country. And that makes us very, very vulnerable. So anyway, just don't forget. You might want to tell the people you know that their network is, if IT, it's not IT's job, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but it really needs to be forensically examined. We have never gone into a new client that had been a victim of a ransomware attack and not found something else. Every single time we go in, there's a backdoor on the server. There's probably keyloggers, and those just lay there dormant until somebody picks it up and starts trying to exploit it, the vulnerability. Sometimes years, they just lay there. And so finally, that I've been kind of mentioning here and there throughout so far, most people have a tendency to think that, and I understand why, but they think that my IT guy should be responsible for our security because it's technology, right? But in reality, it's not. The industry, what we call cybersecurity, or what you call cybersecurity, we call it Infosec, or information security. And that specialty is actually a part of the entire security industry. It's just got a concentration or a subspecialty of technology. And so it's a bit like a specialist, you know, and I guess one of the analogies I like to use is, and hopefully none of you have had the experience that I have, but I found out the hard way that there is a significant difference between a neurosurgeon and a neurologist. Yeah, they're both kind of related to brain and nerves and all of that, but you know, one of them is a I don't want to say theoretical, but they study the nerves, and the other is the mechanic. It fixes the spinal cord or whatever it may be. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. So the two branches have differing objectives. Now, IT, the reason businesses and other organizations have information technology is to increase productivity, efficiency. You want these computers and these servers to just fade in the background so you can do your job better and faster and more efficiently. The point of it is it's IT is bottom line focused. It's designed to hit that entry at the very bottom of the P&L, increase profits. That's what IT's objective has been since the invention of the desktop computer. Well, even supercomputers and everything. Mostly it's supercomputers. Some are just general research. But the point of this is that it's a different objective, and they should be. They should be differing objectives, and I think by the end of this year, all Fortune 500 companies will have a chief information security officer, not just a chief information officer or a chief technology officer. They recognize, from an organizational chart perspective, they recognize that those are two different roles that should be filled and run and directly report to the CEO, independent of each other, because they have differing skill sets, different resources, and they carve it out so the CEO, the leadership of the company, gets a clear path to understanding the risk, what their level of safety is, and on and on and on, everything that has to do with InfoSec or information security. And so the objectives of InfoSec is to protect all the stakeholders in the organization. Now, for some of you, that might be your entire community. If you have a utility, a water or electric or a gas utility, pretty much the whole community is depending on you to deliver that service. But you've also got, maybe you've got a mayor, or you've got an owner or a president, or, whatever the head person is, the head honcho, or the board of directors, the city council, whatever that is, and the employees, everybody that works there. Our job is to protect all of those, because any one of those being attacked, either personally or in the organization, is a threat. And we don't want that to happen. We've got to understand the risk of what your particular organization is under. Now, there's varying different types of organizations on here right now. Just for example, if you are a patent attorney, you deal with intellectual property, you've got to understand that China might want to get into your systems. And and it's not that you necessarily have the IP or the double secret information. You're a vector into that Fortune 100 company that they really want to get into. Critical infrastructures. You've got to realize that Russia is going to attack our critical infrastructure on a scale basis, on a massive scale basis. They did a test run in Ukraine in 2017. Ukrainians did not know from one day to the next if their electricity was going to work, if the buses were going to run, if the planes were going to fly, if Chernobyl was going to stay sealed, because it's run by industrial control systems that gradually vent radiation. They can be opened up remotely from anywhere in the world. And Russia attacked them relentlessly, cyber warfare, relentlessly for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they stopped just short of killing people because it was getting into wintertime. And if you don't have heat in Ukraine, I can vouch for the fact that it's very cold there in the wintertime. So you got to understand who you're at risk from, the type of technology that may be used against you. Of course, everyone here has to worry about ransomware. And another objective is 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 to continuously monitor, both automatically and by security specialists, and respond as fast as possible. Those of you that are using an MSP, you probably have an SLA, service level agreement. Now, our MSP, we don't give service level agreements, and it's a different philosophy. But you know what I'm saying? It's an SLA, and they guarantee a response in 4 hours or 2 hours or whatever it means. In InfoSec, 4 hours can be the difference between a catastrophic security event and a minor annoyance. We have literally responded within seconds. And this is the automation part responds within instantly. But sometimes that doesn't work. So the specialists that are backing up and monitoring the automated responses and getting the information that's saying there's a security event here, they've got to jump on it right then. It's Johnny on the spot. It's all hands on deck. Everything else gets dropped to stop that attack. And we have literally stopped quite a few, but one of them was a very serious attack that had we not responded as fast as we did, it would have been catastrophic. 4 hours, it would have been done, over with. That surgery office would have been shut down, probably permanently. It was a nasty attack, and we've had others where we respond within seconds or minutes to notification that something's wrong. And then information security has to keep track of geopolitical factors. There's going to be a massive cyber war, massive cyber battle. It's already been war gamed. In Cold War days, we would fly a fighter jet into Soviet airspace just to see their response time, to see what aircraft and other equipment was being used. See what, just probing their defensive systems, and they did it to us, you know, and this still goes on around the world. The same thing is happening in cyber. When Russia or another nation, such as Iran or North Korea, you know, all of our enemies and foes and all of that, when they elect to pull the trigger on some sort of so-called proportional response because of a real world incident or political incident or sanctions or whatever that is, they're going to say, okay, we want to hit the electric grid. Get the list of all the electric companies that we've got compromises on. It's there. It's all there. And they're probably, especially in the case of Russia, they're probably going to unleash their criminals to launch a massive ransomware and other attacks just to create even more chaos. It's what happened to Ukraine. We missed it because our news at that time in 2017 was full of all of this noise and well, you know what I'm talking about. We didn't see that. Most people don't, but believe me, that is Ukraine's 9/11. There's it was called not Petya. It's Petya, P-E-T-Y-A. They thought at first it was the Petya ransomware attack, but then they found out it wasn't, and that's why it's called not Petya. But that is a seminal event. There's pre-Petya and post-Petya, and Russia used Ukraine as a test for their cyber warfare capabilities, and because they want to take over Ukraine, but it was really more of a military exercise to them. It wasn't to the Ukrainians. All right, let's talk about some fundamentals. The Nist cybersecurity framework is pretty much the gold standard all over the world for helping you determine your vulnerabilities and get everything shipshape and get secured. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. You know, that's the organization that says this is a pound. You know, Standards and Technology. They created the CSF, I think 7 or 8 years ago, and it was really good. Version 1.0 was really, really good. In fact, they've only done one change or one incremental version increase. It's currently on 1.1, and it stood the test of time. It is literally used all over the world by governments, agencies, organizations, private industry of all sizes. So one of the fundamental things you need to do is assess your organization, your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, who may attack you, what's your response going to be, and you've got to just put it all down and find out what's wrong and fix it. And so when you do fix it, you want to put in a defense in depth plan or layered security. You have to assume that one or more security layers are going to be breached by an attacker, by a ransomware attack, whatever type of attack it is. So we don't want to be like the French in World War II that put all their time, money, and energy in the Maginot Line. You know, they had the right country that was probably going to attack them again, but technology changed. And the Germans had a great tactic, blitzkrieg. It's just run as fast as you can. Run those tanks full throttle. And they were much better tanks than they were in World War I. And it only took 6 weeks for Paris to fall. They did not have a layered defensive security plan. Their defense was not deep. And then you've got, once you adopt that security plan and you start building your layers, those are controls. There's 3 types of controls: administrative, technical, and physical. Okay? Administrative controls, you already have those. You've also got all the others too, but administrative controls from a cybersecurity standpoint are things like requiring everyone to use a different password on every single login, not reusing credentials, not reusing passwords. That's a big no-no. Requiring passwords to be a certain length. Requiring passwords not to be in the dictionary or not to be your pet's name with your first child's birth date. Those are easily cracked. We send out some statistics about how long it takes to crack even random passwords, for that matter. If they're 8 characters or less, randomly generated special characters or anything, I think it's crackable within minutes now, or maybe just a handful of hours. But they use these automated tools to crack in and breach things. That's why it's so important that you have a complex password policy as an administrative control. Technical controls are things like antivirus. It's not a good one, but that is a technical control. You also have a firewall, probably already. I hope you do. You sure everyone has to have a firewall. Never connect a computer directly to the internet. The bots will swarm it in under a second to probe and search for vulnerabilities to crack through it. To crack through the firewall that's the soft firewall that's inside your operating system. Physical controls are things like the keys to your front door. When's the front door unlocked and locked? 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. It's open. The rest of the time it's closed. Who has the key? That's an administrative control. The key is a physical control. So physical controls in Infosec would be things like the cover on servers. Almost all servers, if it's a real server, you can lock the cover so no one can get physical access, get on the computer, and type commands or anything without the key. The server room should be locked, and only those that need to get in there have access to the key or whatever mechanism it is. So those are some controls to be thinking about. And that's what the Nist CSF talks a lot about, is controls. This one is more of a leadership. As a leader, if you run it, and actually I believe everyone in an organization should do good leadership. But nevertheless, if you're the owner or the president or whatever your head honcho title is and how much of it you own, and if you run the whole thing, you've got to walk the talk. It's real easy to make a management decision and hire an MSSP because everyone knows you need it. You need better security. That's why you're on here. You need better security. I'm just going to go out and get the best expert at it that I can and have them do everything and sign the checks. And then when cybersecurity awareness training begins for your organization, it's very easy for an owner or somebody to say, I'm too busy, I'm too smart for that, I don't have time, I got a fire to put out over here. It's so easy. But what happens is the staff sees you not doing it, and they don't want to do it either. You got to walk the talk. It's a leadership. It's a management decision to buy it and to have it put in place. But it's a leader will make that part of your culture, and everyone understands the importance of security. We can't do that as an MSSP. We can give you all these controls, give you all that response, monitoring, take care of things when something security anomaly occurs, but that leadership thing is what you can do and what you should do, and take it seriously. Every single person in the organization that touches a computer has to have security awareness training, and no one is exempt. Otherwise, you're the weak link in the chain. All it takes is one person in an organization to open that file attachment. Just one. And if you're not trained to recognize a possible phishing email, it might be you. And believe me, speaking of those phishing emails, the days of broken English and bad graphics and all of that stuff, those are long gone. I get a chuckle when I see one like that now because it's so unusual. No. These days, these are very, very well done by graphic artists and people that are experts at psychological manipulation, social engineering. It's another specialty that Russia has finely honed. The government goes on social media to manipulate all of the Western democracies, especially NATO democracies, because they want to weaken them, and they fan the flames on all this nationalist and tribalism and just creating chaos. The criminals there are experts at using manipulation to get you to open that file attachment. To create a sense of urgency is one of their tactics. Like, you get an email that looks like it's from a vendor that's used in your industry by almost everyone, and the text of the body, or the body of the email will say something like, we're going to suspend your account unless you pay these unpaid invoices. Attached is a listing of them. They're creating a sense of urgency because, you go, I can't get shut off by this vendor. That'll shut us down. So bookkeeping gets it, and they're trying to do their job. Hey, what's going on here? I know it's paid up. Let me see what they say that we haven't paid. And they open the file attachment. They did it because they got fooled on that urgency and the other parts of that email. And then finally, the last fundamental that I just really can't stress enough, it's the whole orchestration of your entire security scenario has to be done by Infosec specialists. And there is orchestration from the very get-go, from the assessment all the way through the entire life of your organization. The response, the mitigation, the detection, the recovery, all of that has to be orchestrated by people that know exactly what they're doing, that have experience with these things. All right, we got a poll here. See who's still awake. How important is it for your firm to be in compliance? And what that means is, is your firm required to be compliant to some security standards or recommendations, things like that? Financial firms, I know you've got to be compliant. Medical, I know you've got to be HIPAA compliant. I'm just, as an aside, speaking of HIPAA, whenever I go to the doctor or the hospital or whatever, I just look around because I know HIPAA backwards and forwards, and there's a violation, there's a violation, there's a violation. HIPAA is one of those things, like, no one gets to 100% compliance, but they document that they're not in compliance, and this is why we're not in compliant with this particular part. It's a bit like the security assessment. Oh, well, 75% of you it's very, very important. So in the financial sector, we're going to talk about this more, they're required to encrypt all data at rest. That means all data is encrypted. Servers, workstations, laptops, phones, tablets, all of that's required to be encrypted. But that's a good recommendation for anybody, which we're going to get to. All right, so if you go down the rabbit hole with Nist Cybersecurity Framework, there's 5 components to it. It's real easy. The first one's identify. Second one's to protect. Let's implement those controls. Then you got to have detection in place. And this means people monitoring all the time so they can respond. And then finally, if all else fails, you've got to have a recovery plan already ready to go, which means you've got to monitor your backups each and every day, because they do break. If you remember that slide earlier, the failure rates of different things. There's not a backup system out there that doesn't break. And the best way to do it is do automatic and manual reviews and periodic testing of recovery. If you don't monitor those backups, or you don't pay somebody to monitor those backups, you probably won't have one when you need it. So just real briefly here, on the bottom of the screen here is an actual security assessment that you will do, hopefully, and it identifies your risk. And these are multiple page documents, but this is just an excerpt here. It's got a chart there and everything, but the first one down here is critical, or there's 2 criticals on this assessment. All users are informed and trained. They failed that, which means security awareness training. And this assessment maps directly to the Nist CSF. So if it's not the MSSP that says everybody needs to be informed and trained. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Sorry, I'm pointing in front of the camera. I'm looking at my screen. It's NIST, the U.S. government, trying to get everybody compliant. They're saying you've got to do this, and you've identified that it's a critical problem. And NIST follows other standards and technologies. There's NIST publications, ISO standards 27001 for those of you that know that, COBIT, and other organizations. So this helps you get in compliance, and it's compatible with just about all sorts of compliant requirements. But it's like the basic first step that you really need to do. All right, in addition to NIST, Ann Neuberger, which at the time was acting National Security Advisor in the White House, basically our nation's #1 cyber chief, reporting to the president about current and potential threats. The best we have. We created a space force when we should have created a cyber force. Nevertheless, in June, just a few months ago, she wrote this letter to corporate executives and business leaders. What we urge you to do to protect against the threat of ransomware. This is the White House saying we need everyone to do these things to help stop this ransomware scourge that we're experiencing. She named 5 things to do. Number 1, use MFA, multi-factor authentication. Number 2, deploy EDR. And we're going to get into this, but that is a replacement for antivirus. Number 3, encrypt your data. Number 4, a skilled security team. You don't go to your car mechanic if you need heart surgery, and you don't go to your heart surgeon if you need car repairs. That's what she means by that. Number 5 is continuously incorporate new threat info into defenses. That means staying on top of new threats, new threat actors, new threat technologies, and geopolitical dynamics. That's what number 5 means. Let's go into those. All right, so I'm sure everybody here is familiar with MFA or multi-factor authentication. It's also referred to as two-factor authentication. My bank, or this bank, actually has a 4-factor. It's PIN, this thingaduchy, this MFA that's on the phone. That's a screenshot of my in that 3 seconds left was the actual number to type in. Username and password, it's 4 factors. But at a very base, you've got to have MFA, and we require it for any remote access. If you have remote, like you access your desktop from your home computer, and all it's asking for is a username and password, that's a ticking time bomb to be hacked. And you should also use it everywhere that offers it. Facebook has MFA. Amazon has MFA. And if you're using a good password manager, it'll store that for you. So you don't even have to have your phone with you. It'll be in your password manager. But the phone's a good way too. In fact, I store all of mine except for places that require me to use their stuff. All of my MFA is stored in my password manager. And we're a Keeper partner, so we really like Keeper. 1Password is another one that's really good. We used 1Password for a few years. Before that, we used LastPass. I'm not as crazy about it as I once was. It used to be the best there was, but I would recommend Keeper or 1Password over LastPass. And there's others out there like MyKey, and I can't remember. And those are good too. But our favorite's Keeper, and we're a Keeper partner. All right, so what is EDR? This is, if you take anything away from this, this will dramatically reduce the likelihood of a successful ransomware attack. EDR stands for Endpoint Detect and Respond. The key difference between EDR and antivirus is it uses AI, or machine learning, artificial intelligence. and it looks at the behavior of the computer and the user in real time. It doesn't look for a signature. It doesn't rely on signatures. It doesn't have to have a signature to detect a threat. So, for example, in the case of a ransomware attack, there is no virus in it. It is literally Microsoft Office code if you're using Outlook for mail, and say Excel for your spreadsheet, and the operating system. It's built into Windows, built into Microsoft Office. The user clicks on the file attachment. Inside the spreadsheet is a macro. It's part of Excel. It's got a macro. The macro calls the disk encryption service that's built into Windows, the same one that you should be using anyway, to encrypt your disk. And it calls the encryption service, and that's it. It starts encrypting files. But it's using their key instead of your private key. Well, because of artificial intelligence, EDRs know that it's suspicious. It's unusual when a spreadsheet has a macro, but it's there's a lot of people that use a lot of macros in spreadsheets. If you're in financial or accounting, you probably rely on them. But then it sees the macro calling the Windows encryption service, and an EDR will immediately freeze that process because it learned that that's exactly how a ransomware attack gets deployed. And that is the big difference. From a defensive standpoint, it's 1,000% better than an antivirus. And with the modern threats there are these days, the NSA tools being used to hack us, used against us, those types of threats aren't easily detected, if at all, by antivirus. They were designed not to be detected by antivirus. So the antivirus is dead, or it should be. And sometimes we have people leave this and they just happen to get an email from their McAfee, their McAfee that says, "Hey, we've got EDR." Or Norton says we've got EDR. They're not real EDRs. They are not enterprise grade tools. There's not a thing in McAfee, Norton, I don't care what suite you might think is best, but that none of the components, none of those technical controls in that suite is anywhere near being best of breed. We want to do best of breed EDR. Gartner, I think they do it every year, but they study the whole EDR landscape, all the players and the competitors and everything, and they put them in 4 boxes. I forgot what the XY is, but basically the stuff in the upper right box is the best. It's called the Magic Quadrant. That's what that study, and they use it for lots of different things too, evaluations. You want something that's in that top right box. The 2 best are generally considered to be CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. They're both good. We're a SentinelOne partner, but either one of those would be my choice, my recommendation to go with if you're talking to a security specialist. There's other good ones. We deploy also another product called Huntress for different reasons. And I think we're doing it both of them all the time now. They play nice together. And Huntress it's really more of I don't want to say backup. Their security operations center is incredible. SentinelOne has stopped threats, but we rely most of the time on Huntress to actually fix it, to help us get the customer and the client back up and running. The SentinelOne does too. That's where the orchestration comes in, right? So an MSSP orchestrates and coordinates support from their service providers. So just like you pay an MSSP a monthly fee for certain levels of security for certain reasons and mitigation of risk, lower your risk of being put out of business, MSSPs have to do the same thing. And MSSPs should always be willing to rip and replace as the geopolitical dynamics change, better EDR comes on the market. It's a continuous evaluation, evolution, and a never-ending battle, frankly. Now, when you start looking around, you talk to an MSSP, they may call it MDR, an XDR, EPP, endpoint protection, whatever that is, program or something. There are some technical differences in those terms. However, for the most part, they're used marketing speak. So SentinelOne started calling their EDR EPP a couple of years ago, I think. MDR stands for Managed Endpoint Detect Response. And that's really what all the MSP is doing. They're managing it. They're managing that computer and detecting it and responding. So it's managed EDR. This is a class of products that you need to replace your antivirus with. You can't buy it yourself. It's only delivered from an Infosec specialist. But as the White House says, you've got to have a skilled security team. So number 3 is turn on disk encryption. If you've got a Mac, congratulations, it's on by default. And Windows might be on by default now, but it wasn't that long ago where you had to turn it on. And this means your servers, your desktops. Not only can anything be stolen, but when you dispose of a computer, recycle it, or donate it, there is a whole subculture, a whole criminal specialty that buys used hard drives to harvest the data off of it and see if they can sell it to Russia, Chinese, criminals. If that data is encrypted, the data is not accessible outside of the computer. If it's not encrypted, all you got to do is take the hard drive out, plug it into a USB port, and you're off to the races. You can see everything on the disk. It bypasses all the operating system security. And the reason Ann recommends this, the White House recommends this, is it decreases your attack surface. You know, if you do something like least privilege access on your file server, it's really easy, convenient, and efficient to do a network share and share it to everyone. You know, you trust everybody, but that doesn't mean you should do it. From a security standpoint, that's a bad policy. So if you've only got 2 people in your office that uses QuickBooks, but you've got 10 people that work there, they don't need access to the QuickBooks folder. And it's not a personal thing. It's not because you don't trust them. First of all, they'd have to have QuickBooks installed to even see the file, but it all has to do with least privileged access. So instead of I have to worry about 10 people accidentally encrypting the QuickBooks file, I only have to worry about 2. Makes your attack surface a lot smaller. So the responsibilities of an MSP is to keep track. World politics, the Biden-Putin summit in Geneva, that was very specifically about ransomware and critical infrastructure attacks. To keep track of the new threat technologies. We know that there's other countries' offensive weapons that have also been posted and are being used against us and them on the dark web. And we monitor the threat intel all the time and adjust and act accordingly, including changing out or putting different controls in place in an organization. A skilled security team is going to do the monitoring, the investigating, and the responding to anything that even smells remotely like it as a security event. It's monitored by specialists that look for anomalies. And it is not a DIY. It's number 4 on the White House letter to stop ransomware. And then finally, number 5 was, monitor threat intelligence, both government and private. Adjust your defense as needed. And security patches, especially the last couple of years, Microsoft notoriously releases very shoddy security patches and they end up breaking something. It's very easy for IT to just say, we don't put security patches on right away because we don't want to be the guinea pigs. Let other people figure the problems and let them fix it before we put it on. If you're not reading what that security update is far, that's a bad call. It's bad. There are patches getting issued, and sometimes what's known as a 0-day fix for something that's been actively exploited around the world for months and months, maybe even years. You don't have time to wait. Those patches have to be applied as soon as they're available. If it breaks something, that's unfortunate, but that doesn't overrule the need to put that patch on there. Some of you may remember the Exchange server fiasco we had earlier this year. I know we certainly do because we run a lot of Exchange servers. This was something that was outside of Microsoft, and I think, CISA or FBI or whatever. They knew it was being actively exploited, and none of the users knew. But when they finally announced it, and we had all kinds of problems, they had just left us hanging. And that happens from time to time. And there's probably good reasons. We're just not in those meetings. But you got to get those security patches on there. And that's what a skilled security team will do. Make sure those security patches. IT's job is to keep your company running. All right, the last question here. I'm running a little over. Check all of these 5 or these 6 things here. Check all of them that you have already in place. Good. MFA's looking good. All right, everyone. There we go. Encryption's looking good. Okay, I'm going to get going here. None of you have an EDR, is what it's looking like. Good for you on the storage encryption, good for you on multi-factor authentication, and data backup, good for you if you are checking it. All right, so I've got a little more. I'm going to run over, flat out tell you, so I'll stay here as long as we need to, but we got other recommendations. This is some of the new content. Only allow company-owned equipment to remote access with multi-factor and probably a VPN. We don't always put both on there, and there's reasons pro and con. It's about risk management, and that's unique to the client. Do they want it? Do they need it? And what's the risk either way? But the standard is to do both. But the reason we only allow company-owned equipment is because when you connect to a VPN or you remote in, you become a part of that network. Your computer becomes a part of that corporate network. It's a vector. It's an attack vector. And if you're using the same computer that the kids use, or or that you use for whatever your hobbies are, or whatever you do on the internet, home computers are more likely to be compromised. And we don't want that. We want the control of that device. The company wants the control of that device that connects to the corporate network. Our Wi-Fi in our office is set up and isolated from our network. So everyone's phones, and even visitors, vendors, and whoever, and our other visitors that use our Wi-Fi, it's segmented off. So it doesn't introduce a threat to our production network. So what we did as a company, we just went all Mac laptops. There's one desktop left, one PC left, and I will predict that it's probably going to go dark tomorrow or early next week. I'm not saying everybody needs to get Macs, and some of you can't, but that's what we did. Macs just work when everybody's got a docking station, so when they walk in the office, one cable plugs into the Mac and it lights up and runs just like a desktop. Windows laptops typically are not that good at managing that. I'm sure they've gotten better. I would assume Surface devices do a really good job of managing that, but Macs just work. They don't crash just because we plugged it into a docking station. So it's got 15 different things attached to it. But it gives your company that control of what is connecting to your network. I've mentioned password managers. for those of you that tried it and didn't like it, they're quirky. They absolutely are. They have a learning curve. It's going to take you 2 or 3 days, maybe a week or two to get comfortable using it. But I promise you, if you stick with it, a month or so later, you're going to wonder how you ever lived without it. It allows you not to know or even care what the password is and to generate long, complex passwords. And you don't care what it is. No more sticky notes. That's bad security practices. And putting them under the keyboard doesn't fool anybody. Posting them on a monitor, especially if your office has a window with people that can see in, is a really bad idea. Most people overlook this, but more and more people are getting the hang of, or starting to understand. You've got to secure your website. That means you don't look for the cheapest website hosting that you can get. And especially WordPress sites. They are millions and millions of websites around the world are compromised and are distributing ransomware and other malware to people that visit the site, or it's being used for other things behind the scenes. So you need to treat that website as you should be treating it as a valuable marketing asset no matter what, but you've also got to treat it as a security risk. So make sure it's secure with a really good, high quality managed security, and actually managed services is really what it is if you do it right. Some of you might need to be encryption. Your financial industries, banking, anything sensitive that gets exchanged via email, that needs to be encrypted. You need to use an encryption service so it can't be intercepted. You can't see the contents of that email by going to the spam filter or the email server. It needs to be end-to-end encrypted. I mentioned cybersecurity awareness training. If you do this in your firm, you will cut your risk of a security event in half with just awareness training. In half. Over 90% of cybersecurity attacks are successful because somebody on the inside accidentally helped them. Over 90% happen because an insider helped them. Accidentally. In the case of backups, we almost all of our clients have multiple backups for differing reasons. So typically it works like, okay, we need an image-based backup of this computer and we want to be able to spool it up virtually if this computer catches on fire. Those take a lot more time. They're a little more complicated to manage. Not much, but a little bit. And so we can't grab a backup every 15 minutes. It's just not possible. It's just too big of an image. Even the incremental backups, it takes longer. So we'll typically set up a data backup and maybe do it on site and in the cloud. But the point of it is it's got to be ransomware proof. It can't just be an external hard drive hanging off of a file server somewhere, because the ransomware is going to find it and start encrypting the backup. In the best case scenario, backups are a function of time and money, and how long can your business be down type things you have to analyze. We have businesses that don't want to go down for more than, they can tolerate 5 minutes or 15 minutes maybe. You might be able to go a day, or, like our QuickBooks could be down a day and really had no problem. Worst case scenario, if we need to pay somebody, we're just handwrite a check. But others, that's a showstopper. The whole company goes to its knees. So you analyze the risk, then you analyze the capabilities of the differing software vendors, and then you analyze you look at the plans, the backup plans. How often, how much, where, off-site, on-site. In best cases, we do both on-site, cloud, and our on-site stuff is ransomware proof. On-site, cloud, and then we've got a few computers that are backed up to the cloud that we can spool up in a virtual machine if necessary. And that's kind of a real good for most people, and it's affordable. And then you got to do the monitoring, of course. Yeah, cloud or on-premises storage. The reason you want to keep one on-prem is if you've got a big backup to restore, it doesn't take nearly as long to just move it across the network than it does to download it off of even a fiber internet connection. A terabyte of data is going to take a while. So by having it on premises, it much quicker restores. Like I said, just do both. Just plan on doing both. This one's more privacy oriented, but just know that privacy and security go hand in hand. So I've begun recommending to people to stay away from products or companies that you're the product, like Facebook, like Google. Google and Facebook monitor a bunch of your stuff to sell that information. And Firefox and Safari and Mac and Apple in general are very privacy oriented. Firefox is, well, first of all, it's a nonprofit, but they're a very, very privacy oriented company. It's the foundation of the company that makes Firefox. And Apple, you're not the product. They do a little bit of stuff with your actions, maybe with music, those services, but they don't, they make their money off of phones and laptops and, touchpads that are outrageously priced. That's their business model. It's not to make money off the user. Google's business model is absolutely to make money from you or by using your data, because you're using their services for free. Don't store your credentials in your browser. The exception to that is Safari, because Apple's got a really good technology called Keychain, and it's across all if you've got all your devices are Apple, it synchronizes just like a good password manager does. It doesn't do MFA, unfortunately, but at any rate, the point of that is I think it's okay to store credentials in your Keychain. It certainly makes your stuff work better. But when you store your credentials, including Firefox, I wouldn't do it in Firefox either. You turn that off and then use a password manager, because it just decreases your attack surface. And like I said, don't use services if you are the product. I know it's impossible, but I can personally vouch for myself. Over the last several months and years, I started trimming down the number of devices that gather data, or the number of products that gather data for me. I pay for search now, or I will be in a few more months. I pay for search. I don't Google. I use a product called Neva. It's started by a few Google engineers. And I would like to see that someday there won't be any more companies that sell your data as a business model, but I don't know. I know it's impossible. You're going to go on Facebook, you want to see your family and talk to them on Facebook and other things like that, but there's just it's that whole creepiness. You're Googling for, I don't know, some duck hunting equipment. And then you get on your phone and you go to Facebook, and all of a sudden it's showing you, duck hunting accessories. I promise you, it'll dramatically decrease that creepiness. It's a lot less data, a lot less of your data out there, which is all about privacy. Privacy and security go hand in hand. Every single person has information that needs to be kept private, like your banking credentials, your PIN for the ATM. So everybody's has to have privacy, and that goes hand in hand with security. As Ben Franklin said, those who will exchange privacy for a little security deserve neither. It's true. It's true. All right. This is the last slide. I thank you, everybody that was here. It was great. Sorry I went over. It's a new slide deck, and anyway. For those of you on the call, you can get one of our Nist security assessments for $495, which is $300 off. There's a link in chat. There it is. And that offer expires midnight tomorrow night. You can give us a call, email us, click the link in chat, or just if you need more information, we're always here, answer any questions. And speaking of which, do we have any questions?
I don't see any in the chat box.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to educate you. Hopefully you learned something today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.